This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey friends, so let me ask you real quick. Are you someone who's trying to get more visibility? Who's trying to be in front of the crowd? Well, if that's you, I want to let you know that first of all, you're not alone. Second of all, if you want to get on more podcasts, or ones that actually scratch your own itch, meaning maybe you have a book, or a business, or maybe you do speaking, or if you don't yet do speaking, maybe you can, and maybe you'd love to. Well, I put something together for you, and in this little giveaway, I'm going to show you how to pitch yourself or podcast, and how to actually be professional when you show up so you can be the next authority in your niche, so you can start scratching your own itch. I know what it's like to build something, create something, and then there just be crickets. No one wants that. You need to be seen, you need to be heard, because you have a message to share, a message that is worthy of hearing. Podcasts nowadays, more than ever, are being consumed by people. And guess who's actually learning the knowledge that's being shared? It's podcast listeners. It gives you a license to be an authority in whatever area you really dream of being an authority in. So if this at all starts to give you a little itch to scratch, just email Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. Again, that's Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. So, my curiosity question for you is, have you ever lost someone so close to you that you don't feel like yourself anymore after you lost them? Okay, let me ask you this again. Have you ever lost someone so close to you that you don't feel like yourself after you lost them? Well, if this is you, then I want to let you know that you're not alone. And I also want to let you know that my guest is the master at finding strength through struggle. His name is none other than Mark Goblowski. And Mark is an Air Force veteran, career martial artist, podcaster, author, and entrepreneur. He is on a mission to help others overcome the obstacles in their life based on his own experiences. So, without further ado, I'd love for you to give a warm welcome to the one and only Mark Goblowski. Hey, Mark. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, and I'm really, really glad to be here with you today, Logan. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for, you have been through a lot, and that's why I wanted to get you on, and just also you have your own podcast, which I really love. I mean, please, anyone that's listening that's gone through something hard, that podcast has a plethora of stories and people that have fought through some really extreme battles themselves. So you can plug that away right away if you'd like.
Yeah, I love my podcast and I love my guests. And there is definitely some people there who have gone through extraordinary circumstances. And there's also people there who probably have gone through similar circumstances that some of your listeners are going through right now. And it could be divorce, it could be health, it could be relationships, it could be financial, career issues. But, We've had Navy SEALs on and professional athletes, a Super Bowl champ, and um, and housewives and stay-at-home dads and thought leaders. So there's something there for everybody, and every story is an example of how a person can overcome, and that you're not alone in this world. There's other people going through what you're going through, so you don't have to feel alone.
Wow. Yeah. Initially, I started my podcast with that exact sort of outlook in mind. Was let's make some people feel less alone, and then also scratch your own itch. The thing that it means to me, the definition that I dub it is you've got a pain point or a problem with yourself, and you found a way to solve that problem. And by doing that, you've actually found a way to systematize it and maybe turn it into a business. So if I ask you that question, how are you scratching your own itch right now?
Well, I started scratching my own itch a long time ago. I took up martial arts and turned that eventually into a successful business, and have made a good living from it, and have impacted a lot of lives, thousands and thousands of students over the years. Currently, I'm like in the second half of my life. So I'm in the second half of my 50s, actually. And 3 years ago, I realized that I had not expressed myself completely the way I wanted to in my life. And I wanted to try to serve the world in a bigger way, maybe. So I took up writing and I took up podcasting. And so right now for me, it's, scratching my own itch was, trying to get through my own challenges. But then when I started to tell stories of other people going through their challenges, it always gave me hope. It always created a movement in my own life in a positive direction. Because, it's so easy to feel like isolated, and it's almost unavoidable. But I wanted to turn that not just into a passion and a way of sharing with the world, but also, it's become another business for me. So, that's how I'm scratching my own itch, writing and podcasting.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So, let me ask you then, since you have a podcast, what's a question that you usually ask one of your guests that always like throws them off, or maybe catches them off guard? And I love for that question to ask yourself that right now, to put you in the spotlight.
Damn. You can bleep that if you need to.
No, you're good.
At the end of almost every episode, I've asked each guest, if you could give up going through what you've gone through in your life and never have experienced it, but you also had to give up who you became as a result of going through your challenges, would you give up that struggle that you went through? And almost 100% of the time, these people have said, yes. No, I'm sorry. They wouldn't give up their struggle because they became a better person. They became stronger. They became wiser. They became a person who could help more people as a result of the challenge they went through. And I have a little challenge with saying that because, I don't care about the challenges I went through. I'd go through them all again, the ones that affected me directly. But, one of my biggest challenges was my son. When he was 3.5, he got hurt very, very badly. And, if I could give that up so he wouldn't have to experience it, I would do it in a heartbeat. And so, do you see what I'm saying? Like the stuff that I've gone through personally, isolated from other, like my son, I'd go through it all again. It didn't matter. The abuse growing up, the violence, doesn't matter to me. I would do it all again because it did make me a better person. And going through what I've gone through with my son has made me a better person, but he has had to lift such a heavy burden. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that for him to go through that. But I know that there's something good that comes out of this for him, like a better life. I think everything that happens to us is really pointing us to something better, although in the moment it doesn't feel like that. So since mine involves another human being, yeah, I think I might try to give it up.
Wow. Wow. I would really like to kind of go into that, like what happened to your son, and um, if you don't mind sharing, obviously it doesn't have to be like rapid fire, but I know it could be a very long story. But more so, I want to know like the sort of imagery that went through your head as you first saw your son in pain, and just go into that if you don't mind. Just I mean, we get vulnerable on this show, so it's the floor is yours to feel whatever you feel at this moment.
Okay, well, Josh was 3.5, and I was in my early 40s. And honestly, when Josh got hurt, he couldn't feel any pain, at least not that anybody could tell, because he was comatose. He had suffered a massive traumatic brain injury. Both lobes, both hemispheres, all the lobes, and the brain stem. So every bit of his neurological system from the shoulders up was damaged. And you could put needles in him all day long and he wouldn't even flinch, like nothing. There was no response. But to walk in a hospital and to see your loved one on life support, it just turns your life upside down. And unfortunately, with brain injuries, it's not like when a person has a broken leg or broken arm, and let's say it's a really bad break and there's, it's broken in 12 pieces. Most of the time they can put that stuff all back together, and you'll gain most, if not all, of your motion back with it. But with a brain injury, it's very different. They're completely unpredictable. You have no idea once the brain starts to heal how that person's going to be. And it was devastating. It was devastating, and it was gut-wrenching to see your son or daughter, your child, in that hospital bed on life support. It was so bad, and I was so scared that first night in the pediatric ICU, after everybody else had cleared out, all the visitors who had gotten word that Josh was hurt, they all went home for the night, and the activity slowed down with the nurses a little bit. I remember holding his hand. I pulled this recliner over next to his bed, and I laid down there. It was 1:30 in the morning, and I was going to try and get some sleep. And I remember holding his hand and thinking that maybe, just maybe, if I hold his hand all night long, his spirit will still be here in the morning. And that's how scared I was. Like, it was so dark. The doctors couldn't tell me anything positive. And you could just see kind of the emptiness in their own eyes, because they couldn't say anything positive. It was, it's the worst feeling imaginable.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. I would so appreciate it if you took some time to hit the subscribe button. I really want to just honestly live and give. Why? Because I was told when I was young that if you're feeling down, the best way to feel better is by lifting someone up again. So in an effort to make someone feel less alone, please hit the subscribe button so the podcast has a better chance of being found and making someone feel less alone. And if you're feeling down, hey, it can help you. Know that by hitting that subscribe button, you just did someone a huge favor. So thank you for hitting that subscribe button. Wow. Oh, gosh. So when you go through something like this, it really changes you, right? And so I think I started off the show with asking, how you kind of feel lost when you don't have this person, and I know Josh is still around, right? Correct? And
Yeah, he's absolutely
yeah,
still around, and he's 16 now. He still lives with the effects of that injury, and reads like on a first grade level, and he can't ride a bicycle or swim because of his balance issues, and there's all kinds of stuff. But that being said, he's so amazing in so many other ways that you kind of forget about some of those things some of the time. But yeah, he's definitely with us, and he's a ray of sunshine in a lot of people's lives.
I got a huge smile on my face right now. I love that you are this person now that has become ridiculously kind and caring and very, very. If anyone listens to one of your interviews, you'll realize the sort of care that even though Mark has one of the most like gruffly like sort of voices you'll probably ever hear, a voice that should be on most of the most interesting men in the world sort of alcohol commercials. Mark, I want to ask you this though, because I've been waiting to ask you this. What is a routine that you think someone could start doing today that is currently going right now through that big change that will ground them? That routine that you think that they can ground themselves with? Yeah.
That's a great question, Logan. And there's lots of things you can do, and there were lots of things that I did in an effort to be able to continue to show up to be my best, because this thing was not a sprint. It turned into an epic marathon. It's been 12 and a half years since the accident, or 13 and a half now. I don't even keep track anymore. But honestly, no matter what anybody's going through, and I really believe this at my heart, you've got to get involved with your own self-care. And sometimes when there's a crisis in our life, or a difficult thing, we are very, very concerned about that loved one that needs the extra care. And in the process, there were times where I absolutely forgot to take care of myself. And I think if, there's a reason that the airline stewardess says, put your put your oxygen mask on first, then help your loved one. And it's because if you pass out up there, you can't help your loved one. So you have to take care of yourself first. So I would just be aware of that in very general sense, like proper exercise. I mean, get out, just taking a walk, getting fresh air, super powerful thing to help you in your self-care process, so you can show up for that other person, or in your self-care process in your own recovery from something. So moderate, light exercise. Meditation is huge, because you need to get some relief from some of the thoughts that are racing around in your mind, and maybe some of the uncertainty that you're faced with as you're moving forward into the future with possibly a new life or lifestyle. And meditation helps to create some space. It doesn't have to be a religious thing. It's really just a physiological thing of allowing your mind to relax and to let your thoughts settle down and become calm enough that you can focus on the super important things in your life. So for me, I would say, and eat healthy, like as healthy as you can. But those three things are like the trifecta for grounding and positive self-care.
Hey, I love that you use the trifecta, the three. There's a magic in threes, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, three pyramids, if anyone's listening right now that's done ballet's foundation is all done in threes. Very cool that you use that. So thank you for that, because I believe 100% in taking care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else. And it's really hard for, I think, someone that is taking care of someone to actually stop for a minute. And the other people it's easier for, and no judgment on those people that do take care of themselves and they're not really ready to take care of someone else. But I want to ask you, like, how maybe the certain problems that were going on in your life, maybe you were having a problem with money, or maybe having a problem with your business yourself, and how you kind of had to like let that go during Josh's accident. Did that happen at all to you?
Oh, I had to put I put almost everything in my life on a back burner at that point, yeah, including my business. And you know what? Long term, it had a negative impact, but I was able to, as the years went by, rebuild it at the same time. But you know, when there's a big deal going on, you do need to shift. You may have to put your attention in one place more than anywhere else in order to, have the best possible outcome. You can always come back to some of these other things. I would strongly discourage putting your health care, your self care of your health, those three things on the sidelines. Don't stop doing them. If you need to, maybe do a little less, but you really do have to take care of yourself. Back to your question, there was lots. My business, relationships, everything, at least in the short term, got pushed to the side. I lived in the hospital with my son for 4 months. I slept in the bed next to him. I told him that first night, I'm not leaving the hospital until you can leave the hospital, buddy. We're walking out of here together. Even though he was in a coma, I didn't know what he could hear, what he was experiencing. So I talked to him every day about stuff. But everything else went on hold, and all of my attention was devoted to him. And can I go back to the previous question about the grounding?
Yeah.
And you said something right at the end about taking care. You're not always having to take care of someone else, and sometimes you do have to take care of someone else. I just want to point out, there's somebody you're taking care of every day, and that's you. You really need to hone in on this. Whether everything's going great right now or you got some challenges, you really got to focus in on your own mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health, so that you can handle any of these things that come up. And that's really a preemptive thing. Mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health. If that's in place when you've got a challenge that comes in, it's way easier to deal with the challenge. So just remember, you're always taking care of someone, and it's you.
Oh man, I'm so happy that you reflect back on that. That's what I love about podcasts, is you can have the ADHD brain sort of like, we can go here and then we can go there, and it'll still all make sense in the end. We're our own worst critics inside of our heads, and we go, oh God, this isn't going to make sense to anybody, but it ends up all working out. And I think that it's important, though, for you to take care of yourself. Like 100%. You're so right. You're so right that you're always taking care of someone, too. And it kind of leads me into this idea of personal philosophy. Some people call it personal philosophy. Some people call it core values. Some people call it whatever it is that you reflect on that always reminds you of who you are, because there's just so much happening in our days, like so much influence, so much sometimes bad influence too. And if you don't, I think, write down or take some sort of archive of who you are, you'll forget, and it'll get kind of confusing. So my personal philosophy is I always try to follow the 3 C's: creativity, compassion, and curiosity. If I'm not doing one of those 3 things and I'm really tired during the day, and I check in and I go, I'm not doing one of those 3 things, it's probably why I'm very tired right now. So do you have a personal philosophy of your own or core value that you try to follow by?
I have several things that help anchor me throughout the day. But as I've gotten older, there was something that came to me, and I had been searching inside my own heart, my own soul, for like, how does a person overcome anything? Like, how do people keep pushing forward in spite of their present circumstances. And part of that came from thinking about Dr. Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, and how he spoke to the fact that there were people in these prison camps. He was a prisoner of war he wasn't a prisoner of war. He was a Jewish person who was put into a prison camp. That wouldn't be fair to say he was a prisoner of war. He was not a combatant. And so he was in these camps, Auschwitz, Dachau, and he would see people die. He would see people succumb to illness or their minds and depression. And then he saw other people who seemed to stay positive and flourish. And so that thing, I wondered about it. I kept asking, like, how does somebody keep going? And so for me, it came up to this idea of maintaining hope. And what I've seen in my life personally, as well as I've watched other people, is that when a person loses hope, when hope disappears in their life, so does action. They just give up doing the things that they actually may have benefited by continuing to do. But the difference is that they stop doing it because they've lost hope. So for me, right now, my life is really about maintaining hope, not just for me, but for my son and also for people around the world, so that they understand to never give up. Like, it's so easy to be one day away from your victory. It's easy to be one workout away from building, a healthier lifestyle. And it's just that we give up. We think there's no hope, and then there's no purpose in continuing. And so for me, it's really all about hope right now.
Yeah, that sounds like the absolute best energy drink. That is not an energy drink yet.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I really love that. Hope, yeah.
Can I share with you a little bit about why
Yes.
and how that works for me?
Of course.
Okay, so I quizzed myself, like, what's the one thing that a person needs to keep going? And like I said, it comes down to hope, but I wanted to figure out why. And so for me, it turned into an acronym. And I found out that when I allowed my thinking to advance into the future, then it was all about worry and uncertainty and anxiety. And if I was spending too much time in the past, it was filled with regret and anger or bitterness, about things that had happened. And so for me, that first letter in hope, it was a reminder to myself to live in the here and now, like to be here now. And when I allow myself that, to be focused on the present moment and what I'm doing in that, whether that's teaching a self-defense class or being on a podcast or having a cup of coffee with my son in a conversation, like, I get so much more joy by just being in the present moment. And that lets me take care of the most important things, and then all the other things that my mind would stir up, the future or the past, get pushed to the wayside. And then the O for me stood for opportunities. Like, I need to look for opportunities to continue to make the best of this situation, to try to maximize, for instance, my son's recovery. How am I going to maximize this? To look to how to move my life forward, my business forward, my relationships forward, or what, and just look for opportunities all the time. And that takes optimism. That's like the sub chapter of opportunities, is when, as you maintain your optimism, you see more opportunities. And then the P, that's really the grunt horse of this, or the machinery of it, that's perseverance. The word perseverance, means to push, and severe, we all know what that means, and it's stuff we don't like. But if you can persevere, keep putting one foot in front of the other, looking for those positive opportunities while you're living in the here and now, it's easy to keep your feet going and pointed in the right direction. And then the E for me was enthusiasm. And I'll tell you a quick story to give you an example of that. I did some fundraisers for St. Jude Children's Hospital a number of years ago. We did a kickathon, which is similar to a bike-a-thon or a math-a-thon. We got pledges for however many kicks all the students would do. So I had no idea how much we could raise. All I did was pour my heart into it. The first year we raised $8,900 or something like that, $8,800. The second year we raised like $9,800, $9,900. The third year we raised $10,004 or $500. So over the 3 years, we raised over $30,000, an average of $10,000 a year. They called me up and wanted me to do another fundraiser, and they were so grateful. And finally, I says, well, why do you want us to do this again? I know that's a lot of money, but why? And she says, well, you know, your kickathon was huge. And I said, well, what's the average kickathon bring in? And she said $278. And that like blew me away, that me just putting all of me into it, being completely enthusiastic about this event, was allowed us to raise more in 1 year than most schools would raise in 30 years. So I figured I needed to maintain that enthusiasm in all that I was doing. And as long as I continued to persevere every day, looking for opportunities to turn out the best thing possible and live in the here and now, then that's the tool that I was going to use from then on. And so I've been using that for the last couple of years, and it's worked literally in every situation of my life. Anytime I've had a problem, I go back to those 4 steps, and it just turns things around. In particular, because it makes me think about the here and now, and I can leave my anxiety and my regret behind me.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, the species of a human brain is very it could be your friend or your frenemy. It could be,
sure,
you know, it would work against you. And the reason why I say that is just because our potential as human beings to be able to think beyond this moment right here, but to be in the future, can actually create anxiety with someone, and tend to even think to be for in the past. The good times that you feel like you're not having right now can create a depression. And I remind myself that all the time, that whenever that's why I think that athletes and people are just working on something, and this is why there's a myth about passion overall that I believe, and you can totally comment on this, this idea of like passion actually being a total thing that's it's mythical, it's erotic, because whatever work you put yourself into, whatever you invest yourself into, you're probably gonna find some part of it that you like, no matter what it is, as long as you get into the moment with that sort of new skill that you're trying to learn. At first it sucks, and then once you move a little bit past that suckiness, once you sort of grease the gear, it gets so much easier. It's like that sort of like, I don't feel like working out, and then all of a sudden 10 minutes into the workout you start getting into it, and it's kind of hard to stop. Or, you know, when you're writing, and I hear it from so many people that are doing incredible things where people will ask them like, oh, how did you do that? And it's kind of hard for them to even like feel like they did anything that was amazing, just because they kind of grease the gear enough to where they move past that suckiness. What's your opinion on all that?
You know, we at my school, we teach this idea that motivation follows action. And I think you already explained that. Like you start working out, and 10 minutes into it, you're like, a lot of times you feel pretty good, and you don't feel good only because your blood is moving through you and endorphins are flowing, but you feel good because you did something good for yourself. Like, you know, you're supposed to take care of yourself and exercise. And so there's all these things that start to pop up as a result of you taking action first. And most of us, and myself included, there's plenty of times where I don't feel motivated, and then I don't do what is necessary. And I'm relying on motivation, but motivation is like the wind. Okay. It comes and goes. It changes direction. You can't count on it to do what you want it to do. So you have to go past that. And you have to start to depend on just getting the ball moving, and then your motivation will come afterwards. Somebody jumps on a diet and a week later they're down a couple of pounds. That can be motivating. If somebody has always wanted to write and they start giving themselves permission to sit down and write for 20 or 30 minutes a day, you start to want to write more. It feels good to accomplish things. As human beings, we are goal oriented. If you ever look at a baby, when it's discovering the world, it's always moving towards something. Like it's always trying to accomplish something, whether it's picking up that toy, putting the food in its mouth. It's always purposeful. Everything it does, its motivation to walk is that it sees something on the other side of the room it wants to get to faster. And we as adults, we think that we should just feel motivated. And that's like the furthest. That would be nice, but it's just not how the human mind or the world works. But what does work is motivation does follow action.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. Well, hey, I just want to ask like a few more questions, sort of, I call it scratching the surface curiosity questions, because we have about 4 more minutes. So I don't usually do too much of these sort of like questions that I'm about to ask you, but just something to leave people on, just to give them a sense of what could they do, like that's specific, simple, and something that they don't have to think too hard about, because the harder you think about it, it's like it's just never gonna get done. You know what I mean? So the first question I like to ask is about that one quote that you've really looked at and it keeps coming up in your life recently, and it is that quote that always puts a sort of like just warmth, truthfulness to your heart. What is that quote?
Well, for me, and this was super important when Josh was in the hospital, I actually put it on a pink Post-it note and slapped it up on that big dark oak door and forced myself to read it literally every time I walked in and out of the hospital room. And this came about because I could feel my energy draining from me. And I needed a way to stay positive and present. And the quote goes like this: always remember in the dark what you know to be true in the light. And that always puts my mind at ease, because sometimes we're looking at the circumstances in front of us and we're not seeing the truth behind it. Because sometimes what's true, it's not the truth. Like it can be raining and storming literally, but the truth is the sun still exists and there's a bright blue sky on the other side of the clouds, but we get caught up in the storm. And we need to remember the truth that there's sunshine and blue skies coming.
Oh man, I love that so much. That's a great quote. I'm gonna put that in the show notes. I want to ask you, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just said great.
Nice. So yeah, the next question I'd love to ask you is, if you had a mentor or someone that's really taught you a lot, just one person, who is that person?
For me, it was my Uncle Jack. And he lived a few blocks away from me. And this man had one of the most peaceful hearts about him. He was a guy's guy. He worked on the ships on the Great Lakes. And, he was a factory worker. He was a smoker. I mean, it's not like he was this other guy, just this kind person in the picture of that kind person. But he was the most gentle, kind soul. I never heard a negative word ever come out of his mouth. And he lived his life based on the faith that he believed of just doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. And he was always there for everybody. He lived his philosophy. You could see it.
That's the definition of success to me, is when someone is a huge practitioner of their preaching, so to speak, and that's really, really cool. My gram was like that, just the sweetest. I would never see her ever have an angry moment in her entire life, and it was just the way she handled situations, which to me is it's not like, it's the difference of teaching someone how to do something through hey, this is how you do a roundhouse kick, versus actually just applying a roundhouse kick in your life. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I know you know exactly what I mean.
Oh yeah.
So this last question I would love to and just ask you is the podcast that you keep going back to, that is or a guest of your podcast maybe that you keep going back to time and time again.
Wow. Well, I've had so many amazing guests, and I've learned one or more brilliant things from each one of them. But for me, honestly, it's Philip McKernan, and that man is so so connected to his own humanity and his soul that he can help. I believe he could help anybody. All you got to do is listen to him. And this man is completely connected to his heart and soul. And he is out there serving the world in a big way, coaching people, giving talks. And Philip McKernan.
Wow. Yeah. And I've had the very lucky fortune to have a connect with him because of you. I can't wait to talk to him. And he has one thing that I love that he always says: you can't, it's like people look out for their passion. And I'll do my best impression of Phil McKernan for everyone right now. Is they look for the passion, like it's like hiding behind a fucking rock, and they'll find their passions. It's like, no. And that was the worst impression of him. Do you have any impressions in the back pocket of yours?
I'm not that brave, man. I've been doing martial arts for a number of years. I've been, literally I've been stabbed, but I would not risk putting myself out there by butchering somebody's humanity by trying to impersonate them. But I have good news. I interviewed Philip yesterday. And so he's the first guest that I've had that I've interviewed twice, and both have been amazing, and I know you're looking forward to connecting with him, and I hope you have a great conversation. Your listeners are going to really just be blown away.
Thanks, man. Philip, yeah, he's a force of nature. You just don't meet too many people like him at all. I haven't even met the guy, and I just know it. I know it. He's a 0.005%er like yourself, Mark.
Well, thank you.
So in the show notes, I'm gonna have Mark's podcast listed down there as a resource that you can check out. He's been on other podcasts too, such as you've been on. It looks like you've been on Ray Edwards' show, right? Have you been?
Yeah.
And you've been on. You've actually also been on. It looks like you've been on Knowledge of Men's podcast, as well as a few more. So if you just type in Mark Goblowski in iTunes search bar, you can find him there. Also, he has a awesome, cool Facebook that he has, amazing quotes and pictures of not motivation all the time, because we talked about that, but stuff to lead you into action. Like, that's what I love about your Facebook. So definitely check him out there. I'll plug that also in the show notes. But last but not least, Mark, is there anything that you'd like to leave us off with?
I think maintain hope, just this idea that it's possible for things to work out for me by living in the present and, looking for opportunities, persevering, and maintaining my enthusiasm for life. In spite of the circumstances that are in front of me, there's blue skies ahead. Like, literally, I believe everybody's best days, I don't care what you've accomplished already, your best days are ahead of you.
Yes. And that's the thing. The truth is, I say this to myself all the time, whenever something is really, 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 really bad happening to me, I always say everything always works out. And actually, something that I learned from your podcast recently that I want anybody that may have a financial problem or maybe, a financial problem. Because let's face it, who doesn't? If it's a money problem, it's not a money problem. And there's a wonderful story that you told your friend, you had a money problem, and they say, yeah, you got a money problem, and he cut you a really nice piece of check to help you over with that, and that's what it comes down to, is as long as you make friends, the right kind of friends. So if you've listened to this at all and you find yourself inspired, or I don't like that word very much, but more so if you find yourself just wanting to become friends with myself or Mark, and you want to quote us on Instagram, Facebook, or tweet about our conversation, a quote that we said or something, please do not hesitate, because either of us, I know I can speak for Mark on this, we're here to connect with people. And when you have that connection and that conversation, not only are you helping yourself out, but you are totally helping us out by just feeling like our conversation that we had today was worth it. So thank you again, Mark, for coming on Scratch Your Own Itch.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later. Don't sign off. Just stopping the recording. All right. There's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to support the show by listening. The biggest compliment you could ever pay me is just by sharing this, because honestly, it doesn't take much, and it feels so good when people create something and take time. And when I see someone take time to create something that really just changed my day, either made me feel less alone, maybe put a smile on my face, made me laugh, made me feel wiser, I always want to share it with the world. Because why? When I share something that resonates with me, why not share it? I mean, that's just kind of the thing that goes around, and it's free. It takes no time at all other than just a click of the button, share, on either Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Any of those social media platforms would be great to share this. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say that anybody who's looking to gain authority or expertise in their area, and they don't want to take another year or year and a half to write a book and wait until that's published, I think the best way is right now is to start a podcast. So if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, if you meet the certain requirements, I would love to help you with a podcast and also get a website going for you as well. And this is not an easy task. It's hard to actually get it done and get it out there. So every now and then we need some help, and I'm here for you. So please reach me at Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com if you're interested at all. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.